Good evening and welcome to the April 20th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. Andrew, would you be willing to sit for Mr. Mahana this evening?
Yes.
Could you speak up, please?
Maybe if I move the microphone, that might help. How's that?
Thank you.
So Mr. Mahana won't be here tonight. Mr. Simonis will be sitting for him. Vice Chairman Clark will be a little bit late. He has a family engagement, but he will be here or is expected to be here. So the first item on our agenda is approval of minutes. Folks reviewed those. Motion to approve.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All approved. We have our first item, our first determination of completeness. We have several. Request of Frederick J. Bailey III and Joyce Nelson as owners, for Tuck Realty Corporation as applicant, and I think we might have a new applicant. We'll ask about that shortly. Requesting preliminary and final subdivision approval for a lot line relocation plan. I'm going to read all these when we get into them as well. So the second is Aviation Avenue Group LLC for property 80 Rochester Avenue, otherwise known as 100 New Hampshire Avenue, for subdivision approval. And I have motions to accept these two applications as complete.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Accepted. For site plan, we have, again, the request of Frederick J. Bailey III and Joyce Nelson as owners of Tuck Realty Corporation as owner and applicant, excuse me, for property at 212 Woodbury Avenue. And another request, again, for Aviation Avenue Group LLC as applicant for property at 80 Rochester Avenue, otherwise known as 100 New Hampshire Avenue, both for site plan approval. Motions to accept these. That's complete.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Accepted. We have a request to postpone the request of Nicole J. Giusto and David Sinclair as owners for property at 765 Middle Street. They are requesting site plan approval for a fourth dwelling unit on a new detached structure with a 3-bay garage, including stormwater management improvements, expanded driveway, utility services, and landscaping. This property is in Assessor's Map 148, Lot 37, in the General Residence GRA District and Historic Districts. They have requested this be postponed. Can we have a motion to postpone?
Motion to postpone to our next meeting?
We should be specific, yes.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Postponed. We have three matters on the agenda for Frederick J. Bailey III on the agenda. It's Frederick J. Bailey III and Joyce Nelson as owners. Tuck Realty Corporation as applicant. The matters we just accepted is complete. We have items 3A for subdivision, 3C for site plan approval, and item 4A, a conditional use permit for the noise overlay conditional use permit that's also being requested. I'd like a motion to consider these together for discussion and vote on them separately.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will do that. So we'll start with the preliminary and final subdivision approval request for Frederick J. Bailey III and Joyce Nelson as owners for Tuck Realty Corporation as applicant. Properties at 212, 214, and 216 Woodbury Avenue. Requesting, as I said, preliminary and final subdivision approval for lot line relocation to create the following lots. Proposed lot 1 to be 60,025 square feet of lot area, where 26,012 square feet are existing. Proposed lot 2 to be 12,477 square feet of lot area, where 29,571 square feet are existing. And proposed lot 3 to be 7,917 square feet of lot area, where 24,836 square feet are existing. No changes in street frontage are proposed. The property is located in Assessor's Map 175, lots 1, 2, and 3, and lie within the General Residence A districts. This property was recently transferred, and so we'd like an update on how the relationship between the current owner and the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Tim Phoenix from Hopeful Phoenix, Gormley & Roberts. I'm legal counsel to both Tuck Realty, the applicant, and the new owner, Maple Heights Realty. We probably should have gotten this in before tonight, but it just slipped my mind. Maple Heights Realty closed on all of these parcels on March 31st. It is now the owner. Tuck Realty is still the applicant. So if we need to file something changing the owner from Nelson and Bailey, we can do that in the near term, tomorrow or Monday.
Do you represent both?
I do.
So you can give us the authority to proceed on the basis of the application that was filed?
You have the authority to proceed as counsel for the owner and the current owner and the applicant.
I think we're good. Let's proceed. Who's here to present this application?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe Coronati, Jones and Beach Engineers. I guess I'll be presenting tonight. Just finding a place for my plans. This property is actually consists of 3 different properties. It's map 175, lots 1, 2, and 3. It's also 212, 214, and 216 Woodbury Ave. The property currently has 3 houses on it. The house at 212 Woodbury is a sort of an older, more run-down, somewhat dilapidated old mansard home on the corner. The houses at 214 is a recently constructed ranch, and 216 is an older Gundalow-style home. The homes at 214 and 216 will be remaining as part of this development. The only existing home that would come down is the house at the corner, 212 Woodbury Ave. So the first part of our application is a lot line adjustment. It's a couple of lot line adjustments. So basically, as you can see on the plan that's up before you, the lots, the homes at 214 and 216 run all the way from Woodbury all the way back to the western property line that actually abuts the Best Western. And what we're looking to do is make those lots smaller, but yet still conforming, and then take that extra land that is in the back of those lots, add it to the lot that's 212 Woodbury, and then create one developable parcel. So what we're left with is a parcel of land that allows us to have 8 dwelling units. We have laid those out. We have laid those out so that we have 2 duplexes and 2 duplexes and 4 single families for a total of 8 units. The land area that we have for that is just over 60,000 square feet. So as you can see on the site plan, the driveway, I think this is the driveway for this new development will come off of Boyd Road. It's lined up directly across the street from the Housing Partnerships development on the other side of Boyd Road. We'll be closing off our curb cut on Woodbury Ave, that used to service the home at 212. We'll be retaining the stone walls and that are out along that roadway that you may have seen. There's even a nice entrance on either side of the driveway, and we're going to convert that into basically a walkway to what will become a future sidewalk. This development includes basically the 2 duplexes. This duplex on the corner has been designed specifically for that location to have a mansard style roof and a look to replicate the existing home that's there now. And then this duplex that's on Boyd Road, oops, wrong button, looks slightly different than that. And then we have 4 single-family homes. These are all Craftsman style homes. All the units have 2-car garages, have a driveway that allows 2 cars to park in front of their garages, and we are also providing 2 visitor spaces on the lot. Requirement of your zoning to require some visitor spaces, so we have those here that meet your zoning. We have a truck turnaround here for larger vehicles that come into the site. We'll be able to back into that and turn around. We are also proposing a sidewalk all the way from our entrance on Boyd, around the corner on Woodbury, and this goes all the way to, kind of goes off the screen, but it goes all the way to the Holiday Inn driveway. When they built the Holiday Inn, they brought a sidewalk towards us. So this will now connect from the Holiday Inn all the way to Boyd. I believe the city, someday will most likely be extending that sidewalk further across the Housing Partnership's property. But this gets quite a bit of it built along Woodbury. There's no changes to the driveways at 214 and 216. Those houses will remain, their driveways will remain. And so really not much changes to them other than the takeaway of their rear of their land. The site development for this, for grading, drainage, and those type of items are all on the grading drainage plan. There's quite a few low impact design features to this site. We have multiple rain gardens. We have a rain garden here at the corner of Boyd and Woodbury. We have a small infiltration stone, basically a stone infiltration bed located here. This allows the whole corner of the site to infiltrate into the ground. We have 4 driveways that'll have permeable pavers to allow infiltration of the driveways. We actually have infiltration beds between the homes for the sump pumps of the basements. And then we have one larger rain garden at the end of the site, and basically everything from this site drains down into this corner currently, so that's the best location for the pond. And so we're infiltrating as much stormwater as we can. We went through a third-party review on the stormwater, Public Works review, and a third-party engineer review at the TAC level. And so this is a very detailed drainage plan. The sewer and water, the sewer comes out to Boyd Road. There's a manhole right at the sort of the western side of our property line, which works well for our sewer. Right down here is where our sewer connection is. The back 4 units will have little pump stations, but these 4 units up here have gravity flow, will be connected into an existing manhole here. The water service comes off of Woodbury over in this area here. As part of the review with TAC, all of the units will have sprinklers, the single families and the duplex units. All 8 of them will have sprinklers. And then landscaping, we have a very robust landscaping plan. That was something that was discussed heavily at TAC, was the amount, what was the existing tree cover on the property, and then how to continue to buffer this site from the neighboring uses. We're zoned, general residential A, but we have 2 hotels that abut us, and so we've located every tree on the property and along the property line, and then wherever there were openings in those trees, we tried to augment that with new plantings, as well as keep as many of the existing ones as we could. So you'll see 2 different symbols. Lighter symbols are the existing trees. These are along Boyd, and the darker ones are all the proposed trees. And there weren't too many trees on the property. A lot of them were along the property lines, and then along the front. There were certainly some within the middle of the site, but most of the vegetation seemed to be on the edges and and along Woodbury Ave. There's quite a few trees along that area, and Boyd, I guess. But the middle areas, they have lawns. All of the existing homes had lawns and areas behind their homes, as well as some trees. And then lighting. The lighting plan's pretty simple. We're not proposing any street lights. We're simply lighting up in front of everybody's garage. They'll have basically you can see in the right or the top right corner, a gooseneck style light above their garage door. And so we're not trying to have, tall street lights that light up the neighborhood, keep everything as dim as we can, and still safe for entrance. And that's pretty much the overview of the site layout. We did submit, obviously, architectural plans from Wendy Welton's office, Art Forms Architecture. So you have building elevations, floor plans for the single-family units, as well as the two different style duplex units in your packet. I can answer questions on those if they're simple, and and that's all I have, I think.
Well, thank you for getting into the site plan details as well. One question on the subdivision, the rear of Lot 2, I believe there's a back deck or some sort of structure on that building that goes into the setback?
Yes, there's a small deck on the back of that building, and there's one of the things we'll have to check. I believe there's a provision that if the decks are is it no more than 18 inches off the ground, they can project 5 feet into the setback. We would just have to verify that I'm not positive if it's more or less than 18 inches.
So we don't know if that's going to be removed or not?
You think it is? We'll certainly remove it if the board wants, and if you don't mind, we can check to see if it's more or less than 18 inches. But if it's if the board wants us to remove it, we certainly can.
Well, we can come back to that. Before you get into the sound overlay and the conditional use permit, the board have questions on the subdivision boundary line adjustment site plan issues? Andrew?
You have a comprehensive drainage analysis, and that's super helpful. Just hoping you can paint more of a picture or illustrate the drainage and grading behind units 7 and 8. Obviously, these are larger and taller structures than 214 and 216, but just curious as to how that water, other than the drip edge, will be mitigated or pushed.
Yes, so the 7 and 8 are these two homes that are that sort of back up to the existing structures. So we have little flow arrows and spot grades. These arrows, these direct all the stormwater around these buildings. The buildings will be proud, so there'll be a little slope off the back of them to help redirect that water around them and into the pond. Make sure everything enters from that side.
It'll be pushed south effectively.
Yes, north and then west.
Oh, I see the arrows. Yeah.
Yeah, and so everything enters. I think pretty much everything from the site enters that large pond except for that corner by Boyd and Woodbury where we have a separate rain garden. Everything flows down towards that larger pond.
And I think I had read that residents are encouraged but not mandated to take after that pond routinely. Is that something that has to be included in an operation and maintenance plan, or is that part of a prior approval?
No, it does have to be part of an operation and maintenance plan. All of the
Yeah. So it had called out and said specifically encouraged. So I'm wondering if that's something we are considering as well.
Yeah, I think it's more than encouraged. It'll be it will be part of the condominium association that they have to maintain.
Sure.
The infrastructure for sure, the drainage and the roads, the driveways, the roadways will all be privately owned, privately maintained, and there is a operations and maintenance manual, and there's yearly reporting that I believe the city has a requirement from on all these developments now.
Any other, yes?
I love what you've done with the drainage and everything, but your road kind of ends right at that pond. And so are you going to have anything in the condominium docs as far as whether or not salt would be used? And because my fear is that when it snows and they're going to put salt down and then they're just going to plow that snow right into the rain garden, which won't be great for it.
The rain garden is it's not a wet structure. It's a,
Okay.
when you look at it, there's actually two parts to the rain garden. You can see the hatched part on the left side. That's where the actual fire retention media is installed. That's the media that treats the stormwater.
Okay.
At the end of the road, it's really just a lawn area. It's kind of a standard looking detention pond. So then the water, if they do push snow in that direction, it'll settle in there and then it'll drain into the sort of the treatment area, which is designed to treat snow melt. We also have a structure right at this corner. This is more for, I guess, non-snow events, but this is a pretext. It's a unit. It's actually a pre-treatment unit, so that's basically takes the pretty much all the stormwater that comes down that road will end up getting funneled into that structure. That takes out sediment, any debris that's floating, and it's kind of a pre-treatment before it even enters the pond as well.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Joe?
Quick question. I'm looking at your site plan, and what I believe, when I use Google Earth, I believe it's number 6 Boyd Road. In all of your considerations on the site for, water and landscape and view and so forth, can you speak to, I mean, there's a big impact to this corner, obviously. There's a big change for whoever resides at this little house that's almost part of this development. Could you speak to how you considered that property in your?
Yes. So I believe you're talking about the one right down at that corner. So that property is actually now also under the ownership of Maple Heights Realty. But we did look at it's basically on a small lot. It's sort of a front load drive under home, and they have trees along the back currently. Obviously, a lot of that will be changing for that lot, but that was one of the parcels that was in the purchase. And then if you look at the landscape plan, we are adding vegetation and trees along that edge, and so they will certainly see some of the back of or the side of Unit 5 out of their back, which will be a change, but it's a kind of a tight neighborhood, and I guess not uncommon for that type of housing in Portsmouth, their living arrangement, but
Okay, thank you.
certainly.
Any other questions? Yes, Andrew?
Just clerically, so in your inspection and maintenance facilities and property, it just uses should or are encouraged a lot, and I'm just wondering, is that the language that we typically use, or would we mandate they have to?
We can make that a part of the approval process.
It's just repeated quite a bit, so I'm wondering, we want to include a lot of that, I would think. Particularly in the riprap, the swales, sub-pump drains, all of the infiltration beds, all of that stuff just has should or is recommended, so.
Well, is it representation to that the plan includes the drainage structures and maintenance plan as presented? And that your intent is to make that a part of how this is to be operated?
Yes,
constructed and operated?
Yeah, typically those the O&M plan will end up in the condominium documents directly. and then and then there's usually a reporting requirement back to the city, whether that's annually, I believe it's annually, certainly for part of your MS4 requirements. I think that's a requirement that's coming up now in every Seacoast community that we deal with, that there is annual reporting, and those things get always put in the condominium documents.
But if the board so choose to make it a condition to incorporate what you presented, that would be in conformance with what your understanding of what you did, what
Yes.
you propose.
Yes, certainly.
I did have one other drainage question. I don't have it in front of me. I saw it earlier today. At the northwest or westerly corner onto one of the adjacent properties, there was a comment that I believe it might have been subcatchment area 2. There's existing runoff going into facilities off-site that seemed like it might have been a concern, and you're trying to address it with the neighbor. Can you talk about that? Is that an issue, or?
I can, yeah. So the historic drainage pattern for this site is that I'd say 80%, 90% of the site sort of all drains to the west and all ends up off our property in towards the parking lot of the Best Western. So that was a particular concern on how to handle that stormwater. We obviously have to collect our stormwater, but and then we have to release it somehow. We can have water go off our property, but we can't increase it, and it's also not encouraged to put it into a point discharge where now it's all coming in one direction. So that was the challenge, which was a tricky one because a lot of the stormwater runs off, basically along the whole western property line. And so we, at one point, had a pipe discharge from the pond. That was discouraged. Then we looked at different ways to basically spread the stormwater out and infiltrate as much of it as we could. So we've designed that. That included adding all of these permeable pavers on the driveways, these infiltration beds between the homes, the infiltration bed and the rain garden up here were all added. There's even another infiltration bed here for roof water to get piped into. The idea was to infiltrate as much stormwater as we could before it got to that corner, and then infiltrate as much of it as we could in this pond. And basically we were able to infiltrate all the stormwater from all the storms below a 25-year storm. So the 210, the 1 inch, the 1 year, the 2 year, 5 year, the 10 year, we can infiltrate all of those on site. When we get to the 25-year storm, which is a significant size storm, we do have a little bit of water that goes out over this spillway into the parking lot of the Best Western, and then we actually have a page, I think it's the last page of the whole plan set, DR1, where it shows basically where it's all the way at the
cross
bottom
section?
here. I think it's a couple more down. But it shows how that, basically where that goes.
There it is.
Sorry, a couple more.
It's 292.
This one here.
You know what page?
So basically there's this is the parking lot, parking spaces. I believe that's a dumpster. And then there's a catch basin here, and that's where any stormwater from this pond that overflows out of the emergency spillway would end up coming this way. Now, we already have stormwater that goes there today. I don't want to make you think that this is new. We're incredibly reducing that amount of stormwater as well because we're infiltrating everything below the 25-year. So we have major decreases off-site, but that was the concern that that the TAC had that they wanted us to address mainly.
So if I understand the way you explained it, right now you've got a sheet flow for basically the entire western property line. Some of that's now being picked up with infiltration on site, and then some more is being pushed to the northwest corner. And now that will have, during the 25-year event, sheet flow at that point out of the pond.
Yes.
How does that sheet flow at that point compare with existing conditions at that point?
It's a huge reduction. I actually have one of the, Dan, do you know the percentage reductions or the, we brought the whole drainage analysis in case the, so that, are you sure it's one? Well, we can check. We have a table in the, I don't know if you have the drainage report available or handy and want to actually, can you check which analysis point it is?
Well, you can tell us. We don't have to, so we don't have to go to the table.
Point 3, all right. So it, analysis point 3 is the, is that northwest corner. So for the 25-year storm, existing has 2 cubic feet per second, proposed it has 0.73.
For the 25-year event?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That answered my question.
All right.
Any other questions on the subdivision site plan? There is also a conditional use permit for the sound overlay.
Yes, we,
Why don't you explain that, and then we can have the public hearing on all three matters.
I'll explain it as best I can. We hired a consultant, which I believe you're familiar with, Mr. Eric Reuter. He did a sound study because I'd say about a third of the site is in the highway noise overlay district. And he looked at obviously the location of the property, the location of the surrounding buildings, and determined that because of the buildings, the small amount of space that we can actually get noise from the highways in this site, that we are below the 65 decibel reading for all the homes. And he recommended there need to be no change to the outdoor or style of construction for this development because of that.
I know what you mean. Can you explain it for the benefit of folks who might not know what the overlay is and what you have to do? Let's say you were within the noise limits above the decibel limit.
Yes, so the highway noise overlay district was developed to, I guess, minimize the amount of construction or minimize the amount of construction near the highway, or alter the type of construction near the highway to eliminate problematic noise situations either inside the home or outside. So there's a requirement that we have to be anything above 70 decibels has to be mitigated. Homes would have to be constructed differently to keep the inside of the home noise proof. Outside of the house, there may have to be, I guess it could be maybe a variety of different things with fences or plantings to try to mitigate the noise from the highways. So that's something the city has enacted all along 95, and any of the developments along there have to comply with that. And so in this case, we are below that threshold, so there's no change needed for the style of construction.
Thank you. Any questions about, yes, Jane?
Yeah, on your figure 2 site plan and noise contours, it appears to me that there are portions of at least 3 of the buildings that are between the 65 and 70 decibel line, that red line that you've got on that contour.
Yeah, the red line is actually the limit of the highway noise overlay district. And the green lines are the 60 decibel area, limit. And then as you look to the northwest, you can see the 65 is off-site, which may be a little confusing because the red maybe look a little bit like the magenta, but
Oh, I see.
the threshold is the 70, and then in the report, he says the 70 is off the figure, probably on the other side of the
I see. It was the
hotels.
colors. I
Right.
got it. Thank you.
So because the red triangle with a rectangle on it touches the site, that's why you had to do the study. Is that-
Yes.
Any other questions? Yes, Jim?
Mr. Coronetti, I was just curious, were these noise levels measured or modeled?
Well, let's see. He says, he goes through his analysis and talks about how he developed the model.
I think he did both.
Right, he said a computer model of the site was constructed in sound plan. Calculations were conducted using the required FHWA TNM 2.5 engine. And then he gets into traffic count information, which is more relative to your noise ordinance and how to calculate the loudest hour. So it looks like it was a model, and as the chairman said, he may have gone into more detail on the.
I just didn't know if our ordinance requires one method or another, or if they accept both, or this is kind of new. This is new to me.
I think we're required to, there's a procedure required in the ordinance, both for the qualification of the person doing the study and the procedures they follow. And I reviewed it, it looked like they had followed both of those requirements. I don't know that there's a requirement. My recollection was he did do some on-site measuring as well. I may be wrong. But I think the report conforms with what's required. Any other questions of, yes?
I have one last question, sorry. At the rear of Unit 6, you have a proposed 6-foot-high wooden fence, and then you also have a proposed concrete block retaining wall. I'm wondering how tall and long that will run, that concrete retaining wall. I know it has an outflow for drainage into that retention pond, just trying to get context as to how big that is.
Yeah, so that it's about the width of the house, a little bit wider. I guess it is the entire width of the house. I'd say it's about maybe 50 feet long. With that, it kind of creates a backyard. Small backyard, but a level area along the back of the house. It just provides some outdoor space.
Is that about 3 feet tall?
Oh, on the
Trying
height.
to understand the grading behind that.
Yeah, so there's if you look at sheet C3, there's top of wall and bottom of wall elevations provided along that retaining wall. And so, yeah, the low side, which is the southern side, is less than a foot of a retaining wall, and then the higher side is closer to 3 feet. So it's a pretty low wall. More of just an area, a way to create, like I said, sort of a flat space to get outside in.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing for all three matters. Anybody wish to speak to, for, or against this application? Everybody on Zoom?
We have one person, but they haven't raised their hand.
If you're on Zoom and wish to speak, please raise your hand. Nobody present? nobody wishes to speak to for or against this application, I'm going to close the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Board's discussion?
How about we start with, make a motion and vote to find that the subdivision lot line revision application meets the standards and requirements set forth in subdivision rules and regulations to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
My only question is that setback issue on the one house.
Which one?
It's lot 2, I think. Is that correct? Yeah, the back of lot 2.
No, not there. So I can't see what he's talking about.
So, Peter, if you could help me with this, if that projection is less than 18 inches, it's not an issue. If it's more
That's
than
correct.
18 inches,
Oh,
it
yeah.
needs to be removed.
Under 18 inches, it doesn't matter.
That's correct.
So, for clarification, it would be either to clarify that it's not, or if it is, it needs to be removed.
Or lowered?
Or, yeah? Bless you.
Either way the board wants to handle it, if it can stay, if it's less than 18 inches, we're good with that. We can check that, provide documentation. If it's above, we can remove it.
Thank you. It's really, it's now board discussion, so,
All right.
but thank you for that. So we need before the plan gets, assuming it proceeds through to approval, looks like it will, you just need to be clarified.
I think that could be part of the, subject to the approval. I think that we can make that subject to the approval, though.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second with some discussion about that one aspect. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I make a motion that we vote to grant preliminary and final subdivision approval with the included stipulations 2.1 through 2.3 and adding the stipulation of lot 2 regarding the height.
Did we do the findings of fact?
Yes, that was what I
That
did
was what we
first.
just did, okay. Sorry, I interrupted. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Did you want to add the condition there?
I did say I added the,
Okay, with that, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Subdivision approved.
ready to go on.
Keep going.
All right, I will make a motion that we vote to find the site plan application meets the requirements set forth in site plan regulations sections 2.9 evaluation criteria and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Discussion? None? All right, you,
Sure, I will speak to it. So, I was pleased to see all the work that was done on the drainage because I think that would have been my biggest concern about this lot, and I think that was what we all talked about when it came before us for preliminary design. And it was nice to see the attempt to do the mansard roof on the property and facing it towards Woodbury, so that it really looks like there's still the 3 houses that go along that street. So I was pleased with the changes that were made, the amount of effort that went into the drainage, and yeah, it seems like a very good project.
thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
And
Motion
then I would make a
carries.
motion to vote to grant site plan approval with the included stipulations 2.1 through 2.5, yeah. I was looking to make sure I wasn't going to miss any on the other side,
Mr. Chairman, do we want to change the O&M to require that maintenance?
We certainly can. If I get a second, we probably.
I'll second.
We should, yes. Thank
You want to
for
add,
reminding.
you
on
want to
that.
add a 2.6
Yeah.
to just make sure that the maintenance plan is required in the condominium docs.
Yep. Works. If you're okay with that, Andrew.
That sounds
I'm
great.
good
Okay.
with that.
And the drainage plan is part of what was submitted, so that's included automatically.
Correct.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
I will continue to make a motion to vote that we find the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 10.674 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
Discussion.
Well, not a whole lot to discuss.
I think it was explained. No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
I make a motion to vote that we grant the conditional use permit as presented.
Second.
And in this case, the sound was pretty low, so they didn't really have to do the extra, so I think they're good to go.
They did the study. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Approved. Thank you.
All right.
Find where we are.
Or B.
I'm getting there. The request of Jacob J. Sullivan as owner for property at 86 Newcastle Avenue, requesting a wetland conditional use permit under section 10.1017. Proposal includes the removal of an existing deck and landscaping and replacing with 405 square feet, two-story addition, and 630 square foot of pervious pavers and patio space, as well as replacement of existing landscaping with native plantings for a disturbance of approximately 2,764 square feet within the inland wetland buffer, and no impact on the tidal wetland buffer. This property is in Assessor's Map 207, Lot 70, and lies in the Single Residence B District, LU 23-20. Who is here to speak to this application?
My name is Mark West, the wetland scientist who assisted the owner with the project.
And your address, Mark?
I'm at 48 Stevens Hill Road in Nottingham, New Hampshire.
Thank you.
And this project was previously approved by this board in 2019. It is the exact same project as far as the construction proposed and addition, but it had expired and wasn't renewed in time, so we had to go back through the process. This time around, we got more comments from the Conservation Commission and have added new features to infiltrate roof runoff and to provide additional buffer plantings, and also to have organic lawn care, fertilizer lawn care only. There's a specific NOFA process they want us to use, and also to put up the placards. So over the years, these things came up and all of them were addressed. So I'm trying to remember, is it the middle button I push?
Top.
I think the top, the top.
Okay, so the addition is right, there's the patio, and the addition's right in the middle of of where it covers where the patio is. And we also have a small addition and a new entranceway, foyer there. All these black linear lines are now stormwater infiltration trenches that will take the roof runoff and infiltrate them adjacent to the foundation into the ground. So that's a new addition. If we slide up a little further, we add, this property is pretty well landscaped already. They have all sorts of planters and gardens and an orchard, and stands of birch trees and a large tree along the wetland boundary, and all landscaping and trees. There's one tree that has to be removed next to the deck, and it's going to be replaced with a similar tree. And we added additional landscaping to a garden here and additional landscaping to a garden here at the request of the Conservation Commission. I included a list of native shrubs that would be planted in these areas, the number of shrubs that would be planted, and a list of flowers that would be planted. The other condition that they wanted is if you slide up a little further, there's a wet meadow that extends all the way down towards the tidal wetland. This meadow, they asked to make sure that that was maintained. That means we don't leave it alone and let it grow up into a forest, and they mow it once a year to keep it as a wet meadow habitat. So that was requested also. And the last item is they want signs along the wetland boundary indicating where that is. So all of the features that were requested by the Conservation Commission were added to the plans. Again, the footprint of the development is within an existing deck and just a little area in front of the house, and they're making new pathways to the front door and also to the patio here. This is all pervious paver patios. There is information on the plans that show how that needs to be maintained, and they wanted to make sure the owner was aware of that. So all those items have been addressed, and I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? Yes, of course.
How much of the infiltration trenches are we capturing runoff from the existing roof?
The new roof has runoff. So the way the architect is the one who TMS has identified exactly where to have it, but there's water coming off in this direction and this direction. The existing house, portion of the house up here is not changed, and I don't believe that has trenches currently.
But you will be capturing everything on that right-hand side.
Everything that's part of the new addition and then some.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Were you proposing a path to the building, the smaller building?
No, there's a lawn area here, so people just walk down there, and that's an artist studio.
Okay. No other questions? No other questions? I'll open up the public hearing. Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. Is anybody here or on Zoom who'd like to speak to or against this application? You may sit down if you like.
Oh.
No one on Zoom.
Nobody present, nobody on Zoom. I'm going to close the public hearing. It's up to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we vote to find that the conditional use permit application meets the criteria set forth in section 10.1017.50 and adopt the findings of fact as presented.
A second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Findings adopted.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we vote to grant the wetland conditional use permit with the following conditions 2.1 through 2.3 as outlined in the staff memo.
Second.
Discussion?
It's a pretty straightforward request. Obviously, they did come in front of us, and there's a couple of changes, but I think it's overall actually going to help if they're capturing some of the runoff on that existing house footprint.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Giosto and Sinclair matter has been postponed. So we have a request of Crystal A. and Aaron D. Nercessian as owners for property at 96 Buckminster Way, requesting a wetland conditional use permit under section 10.1017. This project proposes a disturbance of approximately 200 square feet of inland wetland buffer. This application proposes the construction of a 12 by 16 shed, associated crushed stone fill for a base, and addition of native wetland buffer plantings to help filter stormwater and offset impervious impacts. This property is on Assessor's Map 282, Lot 6-7, and lies in the Single Residence A or SRA District, LU 23-19. Who is here to present this application?
Hi, my name's Aaron Nercessian. I'm the property owner.
So your address is this location?
It is.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So, as it says right here, I went before the Conservation Committee last month. They were fine with the plans with a few exceptions. The first being the base of the shed, instead of being concrete, it's going to be crushed stone, and that's been updated in the site plan. Second is the 5 bushes that are going to be planted approximately 4 feet apart on center to the back left of the shed. And if we look here, so the shed's going to be going right next to the house, to the left of it there. And here's the line. It's about a 40-foot buffer between the wetlands area and the shed where it's going to be. And the native plantings that they've asked for are going to be right in this area here. Additionally, they've asked that I maintain the property following the NOFA standards for natural fertilizers, which is agreed to. And then finally, on that other section we were looking at, there was 4 area markers for the wetlands buffer for the plaques. So those 4 red, somewhat circles, posting up some plaques there to identify the wetlands area. That's pretty much it.
Any questions to the applicant? Yes, Jane.
Yes, I was just wondering why you chose such a huge shed. Even your own diagrams show that it is a garage shed. Are you going to use it as a garage?
No, it's going to be 16 by 12. There'll be no cars. It's just, I got 2 kids. I got lots of bikes, power wheels, yard, mowers, snow blowers. It's all that kind of stuff going in there.
Because the only way that, where this is all within the 100-foot wetland buffer, the only way to reduce the impact is to reduce the size of the shed. Just that simple.
Yeah, so the initial plans, when we were talking about it, it was going to be 16 by 20, and now it was reduced to 16 by 12. So it's about the same size as my garage currently, which is packed with all the stuff, and I'd like to put the cars in the garage in the winter when the snow comes, so it kind of equates to the same square footage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
The public hearing, I'll open up the public hearing on this. Anybody here wish to speak to, for, or against this application, or on Zoom? Going to close the public hearing. It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we vote to find that the conditional use permit application meets the criteria set forth in section 10.1017.50 and to adopt the findings of fact as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion we vote to grant the wetland conditional use permit with the following conditions 2.1 through 2.4 as outlined in the staff memorandum.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, it's good to hear that the shed was reduced. I had a similar concern given the size, but it's good to hear that it was discussed previously at a prior board and that it was reduced. And then also given the fact that there's very little other opportunities to put this outside the wetland buffer, without, sticking it basically between the home and the road. So seems to be the most appropriate spot.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Mr. Nersessian, I'm sorry if I had a hard time with your name, but you're approved. You're approved. Thank you.
Me too.
We have two items which I believe can be considered together, items 4E and F.
I'd make a motion to consider these items together.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we will proceed with request of Aviation Avenue Group LLC as applicant for property at 80 Rochester Avenue or 100 New Hampshire Avenue. I assume they're the same location, requesting site plan approval under Chapter 400 of the P's Land Use Controls Site Review Regulations for the construction of a 209,750 square foot, approximately, advanced manufacturing building, including 18,145 square feet of office space, 2 parking areas, 2 loading dock areas, minor realignment of a portion of Rochester Avenue, and associated site improvements consisting of underground utilities, landscaping, lighting, and a stormwater management system. In addition, this application is requesting subdivision approval under Chapter 500 of the P's Land Use Controls Subdivision Regulations to subdivide 10.9 acres or 474,333 square feet to create a lease lot for the area for the applicant. This property is located on Assessor's Map 308, Lot 1, and lies within the P's Industrial District, LU 22-210. Who is here to speak to this application?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Attorney John Boson. I represent the applicant who's proposing to build a manufacturing facility at 100 New Hampshire Avenue located in the Pease Development Industrial Zone. With me this evening from the applicant, Aviation Avenue Group, is Joe Gohegan. We also have with us from Ty and Bond, Neil Hansen and George Lucas. The property is currently a vacant 11.4 acre parcel that will be redeveloped into an advanced manufacturing facility that will feature robotized assembly that will serve to create highly skilled and highly compensated jobs. The project has already been before the zoning board, where it's received setback relief. It's been fully vetted by the Technical Advisory Committee, and it received approval on March 7th after 3 meetings from TAC. The project has also had a granted conceptual approval from the Pease Development Authority Board. Lastly, the project has had a traffic study that was done by Ty and Bond, and the PDA had that peer reviewed. We've also done a drainage analysis, and that was peer reviewed, and we've obtained an alteration of terrain permit. So with that background, I'd like to invite Neil Hansen from Ty and Bond up to the board, up to the podium. He's going to walk us through the site plans, and then George Lucas will walk us through the traffic study, and then we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. Neil Hansen with Ty and Bond. So I'm going to run through the proposed site plans for this project. So the site, as John mentioned, is located at 100 New Hampshire Avenue. I believe the application is actually under 80 Rochester. But the site is bound by New Hampshire Ave, which is to the east, is on the bottom of the page here. Rochester Ave is to the west, Newfield Street to the south, and Stratham Street is to the north of the site. The existing condition of the site, it's currently a vacant lot that has remnants of parking, loading areas, and drive aisles from the previous development that was on the lot. The building that previously sat on the site was torn down about 10 years ago. So the proposed building is a approximately 210,000 square foot advanced manufacturing facility. Within that footprint also includes about 18,000 square feet of office space. The building has 2 loading dock areas, one to the south of the site and one is located to the north, with 2 separate parking lots, again, one on the south side of the building and one on the north, for a total of 147 parking spaces. The project will be reconstructing Newfields, Rochester, and Stratham Streets, as well as replacing all of the existing drainage structures within Rochester Street, or Rochester Ave, excuse me. And then also as part of this, we will be narrowing Rochester Ave to a standard 24-foot width roadway, which will significantly reduce the impervious cover in this area. The existing roadway is about 35 to 40 feet wide, so we'll be removing quite a bit of pavement there. And then we'll also be adding sidewalks around the entire perimeter of the project. If you could go to 2 pages ahead. Yeah, one more. Thank you. So this is the grading and drainage plan for the site. As John mentioned, the stormwater design of the site was peer reviewed, and that process has been completed. And we've also received an alteration of terrain permit already for this project. So we'll be collecting and detaining all of the runoff from all the impervious surfaces on site, the 2 loading areas, the 2 parking areas, and all of the roof leaders. Will be collected and piped down to a single large underground detention system on the south side of the site here. Post detention, the stormwater will then go through a stormwater filtration unit with the higher flow events being bypassed before reconnecting into the existing stormwater system in New Hampshire Ave. And the so as we'll be treating all the impervious surface on site, and then as I mentioned previously, the reduction in impervious surface of Rochester Ave is about 16,000 square feet of pavement that we'll be removing. The project is also going to be connecting into the sewer, water, gas, electric infrastructure in the areas, and we've already been coordinating with Unitil and Eversource on this project. And then a couple sheets further down, we have a site landscaping plan. We'll be adding street trees and typical parking lot plantings. It's a pretty robust planting plan for a manufacturing facility of this type. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, who will go through a summary of the traffic study that was done for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. For the record, Greg Lucas with Time Bond. I prepared the traffic study for the project, and so the traffic study has been, I know the traffic study has been provided to the board. The traffic study was peer reviewed by PDA's peer review consultant, VHB, and we had updated the report to respond to their comments. I won't go into great depth about summarizing the report for you. I'm happy to answer any questions, but there were 2 points that I wanted to, 2 main topics that I wanted to point out. One is that the traffic volumes that were collected for the study were originally collected in February of 2022. As a result of the peer review comments, we have adjusted those, and based on New Hampshire DOT preference, that the traffic volumes are adjusted to a pre-pandemic condition. So what that means is our counts in 2022, which were seasonally adjusted to represent a current condition, a post-pandemic condition, were then compared to historical counts available from 2019, and adjusted by a relatively significant factor, a 53% increase for the weekday morning peak period, a peak hour, and a 45% increase for the weekday afternoon peak hour. What that means is that the base volumes that are used for this study that are used to conduct the existing analysis scenario and then additive for all of the future, both no build without the site and build with the site scenarios, include that increase, that adjustment based on New Hampshire DOT preference to represent a pre-pandemic condition. The other thing I wanted to point out is the trip generation for the facility. So we use the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual, which is an industry standard methodology to determine new trips for a new or modified facility. In this case, the advanced manufacturing facility, there isn't data that specifically matches that advanced manufacturing use. And so we predict based on a typical manufacturing use. So that typical manufacturing use results in 902 daily trips for vehicles, for cars, passenger cars, and 94 daily trips for trucks. and those are then distributed throughout the network, the study area, with cars going both north towards Peace Boulevard towards Route 4 and south towards Interstate 95. Trucks are all distributed to the south, getting on Interstate 95, south of the Pease area. Because this is an advanced manufacturing facility and will utilize innovative technologies, it's likely to require less employees than what those trip generation statistics are based on. It isn't a typical manufacturing facility. It's an advanced manufacturing facility that takes advantage of technology and likely has fewer employees. So the point of both of these points mean that the analysis that was done is conservative, both in how it adjusts volumes to assume for a pre-pandemic condition, which doesn't exist today, and in how it assumes the trips to be generated by the site, which are likely overstated compared to what the site will actually experience given its characteristics as an advanced manufacturing facility. I'm happy to answer any other questions about the study, but I just wanted to make those 2 points up front. Thank you.
Does this advanced manufacturing facility, does it exist in another location to develop comparative information from, or is this a brand new?
Not specifically, not enough, for that sort of use where we would go out and look at additional sites. We'd want there to be a number of them. We'd want them to be regionally similar in the same region, and we'd want them to be similar in characteristic as far as proximity to major highways. And so matching all of those things to get useful data is challenging, and so we don't have those facilities where we could get that, what we would call empirical data.
But absent the context, all the context variables being the same, you don't have the use inside the building that's the same in another location?
No, we don't have that comparable site.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I'm curious whether or not this manufacturing site is going to have set hours and whether or not your traffic study accommodates for whether or not they work, first shift, second shift, or if they just work 9 to 5. What kind of, does it take into account what the workers may actually be when they begin coming and going?
So the study is concerned with the peak of the traffic in the study area. So we analyze those periods with an assumption of what those workers will be, what the site will generate during those peak periods of traffic. So it's more aligned with that, which is more critical to determine the impact of the site during those periods when traffic is at its peak.
Okay.
Will the site run 24/7?
That I don't know.
Yes, Jane.
Yeah, I read your traffic analysis as closely as I possibly could. So I see that you have 73 employees, but you're saying that may even be an overstatement of the number of employees that are actually there. Is that correct?
I'm saying that the typical manufacturing site that the data is based on likely has more employees. Those sites that the ITE data is based on likely have more employees than this site will have.
It just seems kind of weird to me, given that you have 147 parking spaces, but you don't know if you'll actually, why have a whole bunch of asphalt if you don't know if you're going to fill the 147 parking spaces? But whatever, that's up to you guys. But in terms of the truck traffic, what I was wondering is its impact on Route 16, because I'm assuming that some proportion of that truck traffic will come out of the Pease front gate area onto Route 16, and if there are trucks going northward on 95, I don't know if they're going in equal amounts northward and southward or not, but then that starts to impact the traffic circle in Portsmouth.
So the truck traffic was all sent and will be directed to go in and out via 95, so Grafton Road to Route 33 to 95. And so I was just looking because they have its actual percentages. It was 55% of trucks were going to and from the south on 95 and 45% to and from the north. But they would all come in from the south. via Grafton Road to get into the Peace area.
Yeah, I know that there have been people from that neighborhood who continue to ask for crosswalks for the kids from the residential neighborhoods right in that area, to be able to cross on their bicycles and stuff like that onto the sidewalks that already exist. But I did see that you talked about safety and crosswalk safety, but I didn't understand what conclusions you actually reached.
There was a crosswalk at the site to provide connectivity from the site to the existing sidewalk network. Outside of that, there weren't any site improvements there weren't any improvements that were off-site as to roadways, sidewalks. It was only that connectivity across New Hampshire Avenue crosswalk.
And so approximately how many trucks are going to be going on that Grafton Road in an increase daily now?
So it was 94 daily truck trips, and it was approximately 6 in the peak hours. So 6 trucks, one every 10 minutes in the peak hours.
I really wish you would consider at least the crosswalk with the light safety to cross over from what is really the back of Panaway Manor for people who, from those residential areas that are using those sidewalks.
We did look at the light, the rapid flashing beacon, which is the sign with the yellow flashing beacon. They push the button, the beacon, and FHWA actually has guidelines for where it can be, where it should be applied and where it shouldn't be applied, and that this street didn't meet those criteria based on both volume and speed. And that's what sets the criteria, is the volume of the street and the speed of the traffic.
And what criteria, what requirement is that? What?
That's an
bureau?
FHWA. It's a guideline. It's not a hard criteria, but it's something that FHWA had established. And I know that there was a comment from the city engineer about that crosswalk location, and that's why we looked at that. But we determined that it didn't meet those guidelines from FHWA.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one more truck question. Where it's an somewhat unknown use, maybe you can't say, but from what we heard, it's at least unknown to us. Why does all the truck traffic go to Route 33?
That's to avoid the impact to Peace Boulevard and those intersections. I believe that was a stipulation early on. But Neil, I don't know if you have more background on that. Okay.
So it's going to be a direction of the truck operators. They
Yes.
have to do that.
Yes, right.
Okay. So it wasn't an assumption. It was a given.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Jane.
Yeah, given that it's mysterious what the manufacturing products really are there any biohazards involved that are going to be trucked through there?
That I couldn't answer.
Don't
That's,
know.
Yes, Jim.
So, following up on Chair Chelman's question about all the trucks will be directed to Route 33, is that true?
to 95.
Right.
But yes, yeah.
Now, that's because the other access to Route 16 is at capacity, and you don't want to make it worse?
It's the proximity to Interstate 95 and the expectation that they're bound to and from Interstate 95. So
I guess my question is this a requirement or an assumption all your trucks are going to be coming from 95?
as I recall, it was stated early on that trucks would use 95. So
Okay,
we've made that assumption, yes, in the report, but it's something that would need to carry through. It was something that would need to be part of the operating characteristics of the site.
And the reason for that is because there's a problem or there's congestion or it's capacity at the Route 16?
It has more to do with the demand from Interstate 95 and the expectation that directing the trucks in that direction reduces the impacts of trucks on the study area as a whole.
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to get my head around a requirement or assumption.
It was an assumption in the traffic study that trucks. Okay, thank you.
This is John Boson. I just want to say we also think it's a practicality because the traffic is going to be to and from 95. So 95 is going to be the most direct point to the trade port. And that's why, from a practical standpoint, it made sense for them to go directly to 95.
Okay, so it'll be a requirement that all trucks to your facility use 95 or
We
33.
can control that with our lease as well.
I'm sorry?
We can control that through the terms of our lease with the tenant. We can require them by the terms of the lease to use 95.
Okay, so that will be a requirement.
We're willing to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was my assumption, but I didn't want to state something that I wasn't sure of, so I appreciate John for coming up and clarifying that.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding traffic? Do you guys have more of the presentation, or?
No, that was it. We'd be happy to take any other questions.
Any other questions of the applicant before we have our advisory public hearing? Yes.
So I see that it's part of a groundwater discharge zone. Are there any existing monitoring wells on the site that need to be continue to be monitored moving forward?
I don't believe there are.
Okay. And do you know approximately how deep groundwater is here? And the reason I ask is just for excavations for utilities and footings and everything else, if there's going to have to be any sort of, I imagine the site's going to need a SWIP anyways.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact groundwater depth, but the existing grade of the site is elevation 54, and the finished floor of the building is 58. So the whole building is sitting up above the site. So there'll likely be some excavation for footings and that sort of thing, but generally the building will be in a fill condition.
Okay, thank you.
Is the building 2 stories internally, or is it just one very, very tall internal space?
I'm not entirely sure.
Mr. Chair, that's undetermined at this time.
Okay. Yes, Corey.
I guess just you probably already said this, but this is intended to be a duplex, is that correct? Or is it?
It's intended to be flexible.
Okay.
So it could either be 1 or 2 tenants, depending on who the end user ends up being.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Just so everybody's aware, this is advisory, our action on this, so I think we are required to have a public hearing. So I'll open up the public hearing. Anybody here wish to speak to, for, or against this application? Please give your name and address.
Hello. My name is Andrew Beal. I'm the CFO for the International Association of Privacy Professionals that's located directly on the, I'm not sure what direction it is, but on the Rochester side of the building, of the proposed site development. And we have a 55,000 square foot office space there with about 260, 270 employees at this point in time. I think there's a couple of things I just want to raise to highlight. The first is relative to the number of employees that we have in that office space and the parking that we allow or we have for those employees. The narrowing of the Rochester Ave, I'm not sure what kind of impact that'll have with regards to the traffic going in and out of our parking lot. I wanted to just make a point about the traffic studies that were mentioned. The 2 dates that I heard mentioned were February of 2022 and historical counts in 2019. And I I'm guessing that those traffic studies would have considered traffic generated by our employees going in and out of our offices. And in 2019, we had just recently renovated that building and expanded the space of that building to, we had, it's really 4 units in the building that we're in, making up a total of 55,000 square feet. When we first moved in 2013, we renovated Unit 1. We then renovated Unit 2, and then 3 and 4 in about 2017, and we filled up the building with employees over time. So my point being that in 2019, at that point of reference, we were not full in terms of employees. We were probably, I know between 2019 and 2022, we've added at least 100 employees. So the point of reference of 2019 wouldn't have reflected the full capacity of that building that we're in. And then obviously February of 2022, we were, like everybody else, in a work from home environment. And so our occupancy of the building was probably somewhere around 20% of the capacity of the building, of people coming in to work in the office. Now we're running, we run a 3-2 hybrid, where we expect employees to come in 3 days out of 5, and so and many people choose to come in every day. So the traffic volume is quite different. Lastly, I'll just raise that the 94 daily truck trips mentioned, with 6 truck trips during peak hours, 1 every 10 minutes, is not that different from the sounds doesn't sound that different from the traffic that was proposed as part of a proposal to PDA as it relates to a air cargo operation out of the airstrip that for the Pan Am hangar that had been proposed, I think it was about a year ago. And we had some concerns around that. We're a dog-friendly office. Our 250 employees take walks out from the office oftentimes with their dogs, and this will dramatically change the nature of the ability for them to enjoy the office space. Just as a reference point, we are the International Association of Privacy Professionals, and we're the largest privacy organization in the world with 80,000 members. All of our employees being focused on providing professional services for data protection and privacy. We are believe it or not, Portsmouth is the center of the universe when it comes to privacy and data protection as a result of our office. And they're all professionals earning very good salaries and wages, doing all the kinds of work that professional associations do. So those are the points that I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to, for, or against this application?
Good evening. Richard Windsor, 48 Windsor Green, Greenland, New Hampshire. I come before you tonight representing the town of Greenland and the Greenland Planning Board, and want to start by saying that the town of Greenland certainly supports the growth in peas and all of the wonderful economic benefit that it's brought the region. With that said, since the beginning of peas, or since it started to be developed, practically 2.5 million square feet of development has happened in that space. Great stuff, good economic boom out there, lots of great jobs, and providing a great benefit to the community. However, since that 2.2 million square feet of space has started to be developed, there have been no traffic improvement plans along the 33 corridor in Greenland. That said, there is a very large impact to the town of Greenland. I heard mentioned here today some concerns about the traffic circle in Portsmouth, the concerns about the intersection of 16, and we didn't talk at all about what was going westbound on 33. To think of 94 trucks coming out of Pease, and turning and assuming they are all going to go onto 95 is, well, probably a little bit naive. Because if we go out of Grafton Ave and you take a right, what is 2 miles up the road? The TA truck stop. Where do trucks go? They go for fuel and everything else. So to make an assumption that those 94 trucks are hitting 95 immediately, or that you could control that via a lease, is again naive. So the existing traffic patterns on Route 33 are impacting our town in a very disproportionate manner. The intersections at peak are now at a grade level F and are resulting in daily backups in excess of 1 mile. It's impacting our ability to service for emergency services, and it's impacting the safety of our citizens. In addition, the town of Greenland reached out and we acquired the services of Van Ness Associates to do a peer-reviewed study of the traffic study done for this project. Van Ness Association has highlighted significant flaws and lack of analysis in the applicant's traffic report. And the application should be tabled at the very least until those matters are thoroughly assessed. Dan LaCivita of Van Ness Associates, he's here this evening if you guys would like to hear from him. There's a clear nexus that exists between any development in Pease and the Route 33 corridor. There are a number of people who work in Pease that come from Lee, they come from Newmarket, they come from Nottingham, and they come from those areas, and so they're coming out 108, hitting 33 through Stratham and in through Greenland and right to Pease. It's a natural flow of traffic, and you can see that. I would encourage any one of you to drive on 33 during the peak hours. Let me rephrase that. I would challenge you to drive on 33 at those peak hours. I personally, I live on the other side of Greenland, and I benefit from that because I don't have to drive there very often. But I must say, it was just last week that I had a dentist appointment in the morning before I went to the office. I work over towards Manchester, and so while I was driving 33, and I was shocked. By the time I hit Bayside Road almost to the Stratham line, bumper to bumper, dead stop. It's kind of unacceptable. I think we've gotten to the point now when, as a town, we've approached this and done our best to be neighborly and try to cajole people into addressing this, but I think that it's really reached a tipping point for us. And we're hopeful that we can have some productive dialogue about how we can address this. And stop the insanity at some point, because some improvements have to be made. I think it was 15 years ago, Target and Lowe's was up in front of the town of Greenland, and many of the residents of Portsmouth came to the town of Greenland with really significant traffic concerns about how that would impact Route 33 for Portsmouth, and we listened. And I can tell you that was when I first started on the planning board, now almost 18 years ago. And that was my indoctrination to the planning board, and I remember that. And we took great efforts to make sure that we took care of that. And we held that applicant accountable, and you can see what happened. I mean, I brought 4 lanes on 33 all the way from where it wasn't 4 lanes down by the Portsmouth line and all the way up to 151 Post Road. And so we did our diligence to make that happen, and look out for the citizens of both Greenland as well as Portsmouth. And I think that we would very much appreciate that same treatment as we look towards these proposals in Pease. So, we truly do appreciate the economic benefit that Pease brings us. And I mean, there are people in Greenland that work there and all over the community. It's a great win. I think that, Pease, I remember when the base shut down, and yeoman's work to everybody involved. I mean, it's fantastic what's happened out there. I mean, really just incredible. And I think that it's a testament to good planning, and just an amazing economic development. But at the same rate, I think we need to be responsible about the traffic management and what's happening in other communities and take that into consideration. And we would strongly advocate that there's a comprehensive off-site road mitigation package that provides clear and immediate physical improvements to the Route 33 corridor. And until that occurs, continued development at Pease should not occur. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just so that folks understand, this is a public hearing portion. You're good. You can sit down if you like. Anybody who wishes to bring anything to our attention should do it now, because there's no back and forth with the planning board at this point. So anyone wishes to speak to, for, or against the application, please do so now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, my name is Daniel Lasivita. I am the traffic engineer from Finaston Associates that Rich mentioned. I'm going to kind of preface my couple comments by saying that our independent review of the traffic study had a specific emphasis on the Greenland, on the traffic impacts on Greenland, as opposed to really Portsmouth. But with that in mind, as you've heard, Greenland is concerned about traffic and build out in the Pease heading along Route 33 west towards Greenland. And with that in mind, we reviewed the traffic study, and we found that it did not recognize that trips associated with the project will come from the west on 33. I believe that all traffic going down Grafton Road and heading west, truck trips and passenger car trips, employee trips included, were assigned to 95. So there was no traffic that was sent west on 33 towards Greenland. Based on a review of the 33 Grafton Road intersection, we found that approximately 50% of the trips that were arriving during the morning and exiting during the evening were found to come from 33 in Greenland, whether they originated in Greenland themselves or came up 108 onto 33. And based on a review of travel patterns in the area, we estimate that approximately 15 to 20% of trips that are generated by the project site may come from Route 33 westbound. And that comes out to be, I believe, just under 150 trips over the course of the whole day, with about 30 during each of the peak hours. Something that was also mentioned, or something that was not mentioned in the traffic study, was the TA Travel Center, the truck stop. We understand that it might not have a large impact on the traffic analysis of the traffic study, and it most likely wouldn't affect the outcome, but that is still something that would be good to mention. And once again, I will say, I think you heard it in Rich's presentation. It's not, the town of Greenland is not necessarily against this project or future development in general. It is just that there have been consistent developments throughout the Pease and in other parts of Portsmouth that have had small but incremental and continuous effects on traffic in Greenland, and traffic studies for many projects, not just this one, but this one is included, that have not studied intersections in Greenland, not had any form of off-site mitigation proposals to try to help alleviate some of that traffic. So I will be here to answer any questions that the board has, in case there are any. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As I said, unfortunately, we're not supposed to ask questions at this stage, but so.
Understandable. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to, for, or against this application? Anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, John Boson, I just have a few comments in response to folks that spoke from Greenland. Greenland's opposition appears to be opposition to development at Pease in general, and not particularly our project. Before tonight's meeting, I did spend some time reading the minutes of the Select Board, the town of Greenland. It was clear from those minutes that Greenland's objective is to oppose peace projects in an effort to get DOT's attention to do something about the traffic on Route 33. This is supported by minutes of January 17th. It had to do with the amount of traffic at the truck stop at the intersection of 33 and Ocean Road. From the February 4th minute, the selectmen state that's their goal is to gain attention on Route 33 so the legislature can make changes to the 10-year plan and to make improvements to Route 33. This is not our fight, though, and it's unfair to use our project in an effort to get DOT's attention to do something about the tractor trailers. We have a nice project before this board. It's been vetted by the PDA. It's gone to the zoning board. It's been in the technical advisory committee. At no time during any of those hearings did we hear any concern from the town of Greenland. Your role tonight is to review this project and make a recommendation to the Peace Board, and we encourage you to look at this favorably. This is a project for manufacturing in the industrial zone of Peace Development Authority. It's an opportunity to create skilled manufacturing jobs, which are really jobs for our residents in the city of Portsmouth. And this is a Portsmouth project at the Peace Development Authority. Peace is a state agency. They can't direct their funds off-site. And I think that's what we heard tonight is Greenland wants to have improvements made off-site. Although I can appreciate that, that's not something within the jurisdiction of this board. They need to take that fight to the legislature, and hope they do. But we're here tonight on a very good project. And in fairness to my client, we respectfully ask you to vote favorably, view this project favorably. Our traffic study, which has been done and peer-reviewed, does in fact support that we're not sending traffic to Greenland. We're doing our best to send traffic to 95. There are truck stops. There is a truck stop before we get to that intersection at 95 and Ocean Road. And it's our intent to continue to direct traffic to 95. And we would respectfully ask for your approval tonight, your recommendation for approval.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to or against this application?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a point of clarification, because I believe that there may be some, that the minutes of the Select Board meeting may have been misconstrued because there are two topics at hand in Greenland. There is one which is an intersection at TA Truck Stop in which we are working with the DOT to resolve some issues with TA Truck Stop where they have had some issues with fuel pumps that is creating significant backups there. However, those are separate and distinct issues than what we are discussing today. The issue we are discussing today is traffic through Greenland generated from trips from Pease. And via connectivity, any developer is responsible for the trips that they develop and any impact that they have on roads, and those connectivity issues must be addressed by the developer. So while the applicant may wish to imply to you that it is not your responsibility, it is your responsibility, much like it was with the town of Greenland when Target and Lowe's went in. It was our responsibility as a planning board to make sure that that applicant was held accountable for the trips that would be generated from that site. This is the same thing today. While it is not the entire Pease, these trips will generate on westbound on 33 in the afternoon and eastbound in the morning. That is just fact. You just heard Van Ness say approximately 50% of the traffic patterns coming out of Grafton Road go down 33. That is fact. Now, perhaps this development is different, and maybe they're all going to go on 95. That seems like a really, really tall lift for me when the traffic patterns coming out of Pease exist today and everything, and 50% are going either east-west on 33. But for some reason, magically, this project will be different. The developer is responsible for the trips generated and mitigating the impacts around them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to for or against this application? Anybody on Zoom? Going to close the public hearing. And I apologize to everybody here. I forgot to mention that our city manager is on the PDA. She has recused herself from this application. I should have asked her about that at the beginning of the discussion, but no votes have been taken, so no advisory votes or anything yet. Board discussion. Yes, Jane.
Yeah, I very much agree with the condition that's outlined in our meeting packet regarding monitoring the pedestrian safety. I'm still very concerned about crosswalks and kids and bicycle safety, and now hearing from the neighboring company, this Privacy Professional Association, and their use of sidewalks, etc. I really like the first condition about monitoring pedestrian safety for the first 6 months up to a year after full occupancy. So I hope that our vote contains that condition. And I'd like to submit that we also have a condition, given the fact that we just heard a approximate, a forecasted travel data report, and its forecasted impact that's similar to the first condition. We consider having the applicant monitor the actual trip generation for the first and second years of, full occupancy, and the impact on that 33 traffic and that intersection of Grafton Road and Route 33. It's not just about getting trucks and trips onto Route 95, but it's also the intersection of traffic from Portsmouth, traffic from Greenland, and traffic from Pease. So I hope we'll strongly consider a second condition as well.
Any other? Yes, Jim?
I'm familiar with the concept Rockingham Planning has a project of regional impact, or is there some acronym that they...
Regional significance?
Project of regional significance.
It's regional impact. I'm on the committee.
Okay, so what's the acronym then? Is it regional significance?
Nope, it's when there's project of regional impact. We are the Regional Impact Committee. We review projects when a planning board dictates that a specific project will actually affect other towns. They can ask the Rockingham Planning Commission to then review it regionally under the RSAs for that, and it's mostly has a lot to do with groundwater and a few other things.
But it can involve traffic?
It can, I believe. Don't quote me off the top of my head, but I believe traffic is one of them. But I don't believe we have that power when it comes to the PDA.
I think that's
where it boils down to, because I believe I've asked this before, and declaring regional impact through we're only a body that actually recommends to the PDA. The PDA actually has the control, so we can recommend. They don't have to take our recommendations.
Okay, because I believe the Lonza project that was approved in 2018 qualified for regional impact, and that project was sent to Rockingham Planning, and traffic was a huge issue for them, so I'm just
And
trying...
that might have been the PDA that did that, because I can tell you this board did not.
Okay. Well, based on what I've heard, and even before the representatives from Greenland spoke, I was thinking about this board may be a good idea for us to recommend to the PDA that this be a project of regional impact.
I think we certainly can make that suggestion in our recommendation.
Any other discussion?
That's it.
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we vote to recommend preliminary and final subdivision approval to the PDA board with the included stipulations 2.1 through 2.3.
Second.
Discussion?
You, Joe? Did you second?
That was Joe, yeah. I was blocking you. No discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Yes, and I noted that.
Thank you.
I,
Correct that.
can I?
Go ahead.
I will continue to make a motion that we vote to recommend site plan approval to the PDA board with the following conditions, and 2.1 that was in the memo. I believe we want to add a 2.2 to recommend that any truck deliveries use the Route 33 I-95 entrance out of Pease. And then, I don't know if anybody else will agree, but we'll see if I get a second. I would also like to request that the PDA at least looks at the traffic on 33 towards Greenland, taking into account that truck stop is down there and how that they might be able to accommodate that.
I second.
And then, I'm sorry.
If you want to add a 2.4,
Correct.
you can recommend they look at possible regional impacts.
The only reason I'd caution us to do that is I know personally I'm not familiar at all with that. I don't know if there's other board members are. If we were recommending something, we really don't.
A planning board normally has a right to recommend or to declare a project of regional impact to the Rockingham Planning Commission. We don't, because we don't actually vote to approve these projects. We just vote to recommend. So we can certainly suggest and recommend that they consider it.
And do we have the criteria that puts the project into that category? Do we all understand the criteria as to what?
I don't know them off the top of my head. Do you have them there, Peter?
Yeah, I know.
I'm not suggesting it's
As a,
wrong.
as
I
a
just- I just-
suggestion, it might make, as a traffic person, I might ask the PDA to consider an overall traffic analysis of current conditions and known projected conditions for the next 5 years, because it's certainly a topic in the public forum. But I don't know, if we look at everything on a piecemeal basis and make these assumptions, it may not be looking at the entire PDA, the entire Pease property. And as a property that's entirely commercial, it will generate a lot of traffic with different patterns than mixed-use projects. So I'd support a recommendation that they do that rather than anything with the Rockingham Planning Commission. But that's just, and I can't make a motion or.
No,
so
but
I'm just making a suggestion.
What was your suggestion? Because I wasn't writing things down.
That they consider an overall traffic analysis of existing conditions and what the projection might be for the next 5 or 10 years. Now, what that equates to for possible mitigation ties into what Attorney Boson said. I don't know what that might mean. It might mean that the legislature has to get involved. It might involve state funds if there are issues that need to be addressed. But it seems to me it might want to be looked at.
But are you talking, but this isn't project specific. You're talking just overall. That's
As a part of, as a part of our recommendation for this project, that they look at the overall, because it seems, this is a pretty big project with an unknown something happening inside 210,000 square feet. And that's what's brought it to our attention.
Mr. Chair, could you explain why your suggestion would be more impactful or appropriate than recommending they look at it as a project of regional impact?
You'd be more specific. I don't know that it'd be more impactful, but it,
Oh, so you're just concentrating that review more so than just a general regional
and
impact?
my thought was PDA might consider it more if they control it than if they are looking for outside review, but I don't know.
Because I'm just thinking when they go down the regional impact route, maybe they'll look at more than just traffic. You know, I don't know how much other aspects they'd look at.
Can you help on that?
Yeah, I mean, we look, I'm trying to picture in my head, but it has been probably 6 or 8 months since I've had to sit on one of these, so my brain gets a little filled.
Yeah, I mean, here in this RSA, it says they look at, so it could be if it's a residential development, look at number of dwelling units, proximity to borders of a neighboring community, transportation networks, anticipated emissions such as light, noise, smoke, odors, or particles, proximity to aquifers or surface waters, shared facilities such as schools and solid waste disposal facilities.
That's the list.
Traffic, it wasn't.
Transportation networks.
Transportation networks is one of them.
So what's the board's, Andrew first and then Jane?
Yes, just briefly, I do think that there's some validity to the fact that these shifts or the working hours of this new proposal could certainly not be a 9 to 5 operation. It could be broken up through 1 to 3 shifts per day. In addition to that, I think that a recommendation, much like the chairman had outlined, would be more suitable, because even at the end of the day, if we were to tag on this traffic study, it really comes down to the DOT. And as the gentleman from Greenland had mentioned, they've always been in contact with the DOT to facilitate any changes to that Route 33 corridor. So at the end of the day, it's really not coming back to us. I think that the PDA would yield more from it if they were to have this traffic study for themselves, and then the DOT, the PDA, and if us as well, or if Greenland as well, could then make necessary changes or implementations.
Jane?
And I was just going to say that I think we can array the conditions from sort of micro to macro, because I agree with everything that was just said about looking at regional impact, however you want to write that, looking at the transportation networks, looking at that between the PDA, Portsmouth, and Greenland. But in addition to that, I'm still troubled that the travel data report that we're relying on here is very projectional. I mean, none of the numbers, not the shifts of work, not the number of employees, and certainly not the trips generated, let alone the number of trucks that are actually going to be making these trips, can be determined at this moment. It's all projected. So I still would like to also have a more micro condition that the applicant monitor their actual trip generation for both employees and the trucks for the first and second year of actual full occupancy, so that everybody's got that data, so we understand what the impact of this new development is on pedestrians, like the first condition, on actual traffic flow, including the intersection at Grafton and Route 33, and the load that's added to the Route 33 traffic, that we see all of that even from this one developer, as well as recommending to the PDA that they look at this as a more macro subject, that they take into consideration, given their growth overall, what's happening with traffic. But this could be a data input, and I think we all need to know this. I think the business itself would want to know this. I want to know it for traffic safety. I'm concerned about traffic loading and traffic safety through a part of Portsmouth. But I know the PDA might be interested in something that's bigger, and then there's the regional impact piece. So I think we can array the conditions from micro to macro.
Anything else? Anybody want to try to quantify what we're talking about here?
I've written down a few notes, but I don't know if it's in the right direction. So I'm going to fumble through it a little bit. Suggest as to this project to consider overall existing traffic conditions and then projections out 5 to 10 years beyond construction, I think was what you had said. And maybe to add to that, after construction for 1 to 2 years, monitoring, I don't know. See, I'm fumbling with my words on this one.
Post-construction conditions.
Actual trip generation,
Full occupancy. I would say full
Generation.
occupancy.
Generation. Hang on.
Wait, right?
I had applicant monitor trip generation for 1 to 2 years after full occupancy.
I like that. I like yours better.
I love yours. Love it.
And just, I think everybody, at least most everybody knows this, just for the record, though, this is different than a typical project. We can't look at off-site mitigation or anything for this. This is purely a recommendation of PDA. So it is a different, very different than if this was a Walmart supercenter or something like that.
Correct.
Right.
But I'd be open to adding those two stipulations. Mine and his, Peter's.
So you're proposing a possible modification to your motion.
To add 2.4 and 2.5.
Second. If that was a complete motion.
Well, I already made the motion, we're just
You
amending.
made it,
the
you
motion.
seconded it, so you're okay with the amendment?
Yeah, because I understand it now. I just want to make sure that we weren't making recommendations of something, of criteria that we weren't, it's clear. It's clear to me now, and I hope it
Everybody
satisfies
clear?
everyone.
Is everybody clear on what the list is?
I'd just like a rereading of the 5 conditions if we have 5 now, so we know what we're voting on.
Well, I think I have some, but I would like
I can
if you could.
start and you do the last one.
Okay.
Excuse me, just before we get started on that, yes, I just want to clarify something that's been said. I want to make sure I understand it, that the PDA is allowed to grow and grow and grow, add as much traffic, generate all these trips with no obligation for off-site mitigation? Is that accurate?
I don't know that for sure, but I know it's a completely autonomous beast set up by the legislature, so
So
that's
could
possible.
the PDA board ask the applicant to do off-site mitigation?
I think the PDA board has a lot of authority, so I don't know the answer to that, but.
I don't know the answer to that
Potentially.
either, I know, unfortunately, yeah.
Does the state have some oversight of PDA as to them doing mitigation or how they impact other towns?
I don't know.
I don't know off the top of my head either.
Yeah, I mean,
They're state,
right.
organized under state legislature, so one would have to assume so, but I think that's
So
just an assumption.
Can we make a recommendation to the state as well?
No. No, we cannot. You can go talk to
Right, so-
your legislatures if you'd like to.
Our responsibility is to hear from the public, which we've done. We've heard some concerns. We can express those concerns to PDA. It's up to the PDA to decide what to do. You're shaking your head.
No, yes. I meant to be shaking it up and down.
Okay. I saw it going the other way.
You're right.
So, I think my question was, can the PDA require an applicant to conduct off-site mitigation? And the answer was, we don't know.
Correct.
Could we do a hypothetical and say if it's true, then, and the traffic study indicates mitigation is needed, that the PDA board ask the applicant to conduct that mediation?
Short of that, I would ask that if they agree to the report, that a copy is given to this board, so it was a public document that we see. We can't require them to do anything. So, we can make a recommendation. We can ask that they give us, if they choose to do the report, which I think would be a good planning tool, I think we should see it. But, again.
Can I read them now?
Did you, I said something, but I don't know if the board is in agreement with that notion.
I would think that all of those documents would be public anyways, right? Because they're held in
You'd think,
public.
but I'd like to see a copy actually come to this board, but I'll stop talking and let you proceed.
I don't know that we can require them to send that back, so I would feel awkward.
No, it's a
putting that
request. It's not a mandate, it's a request.
On 2.4, the last one I did, you want to request back on that, or do you want it on the last one, on the direct,
On the study.
the overall study? Yes, so. Give me a second.
Let's get through the list. Let's take a vote, and
All right, so we have 2.1 in the memorandum, and then 2.2 would be to require truck deliveries to use the Route 33 I-95 entrance in and out of Pease for their, through their lease. 2.3 would be to request the PDA looks at traffic on Route 33 towards Greenland, taking into account the TA truck stop that is in Greenland, goes along with the 2.1. And then 2.4 would be suggest, as to this project, to consider overall existing traffic conditions and projection to the 5 to 10 year beyond, I can't talk anymore, beyond the construction, with request a report back to the planning board, Portsmouth Planning Board.
But I think we're still missing that condition.
He has
And
one
then,
more to read.
right, and then the last one was the applicant monitor their trip generation for 1 to 2 years after full occupancy.
Unfortunately, Peter wrote that one down. I didn't, so I don't have it in front of me.
everybody good with the list?
That is the list. I have 2.1 through 2.5.
One more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? One abstention? Thank you.
All right.
The next item, I believe, Jim, you're recusing yourself? Correct. We have a request of Andrew Harvey as owner for property at 710 Middle Road, requesting a one-year extension of planning board conditional use permit. Originally granted June 23rd, 2021, extended to May 14th, 2022 by virtue of the Rockingham County Superior Court denial of the appeal that was filed for the CUP that was originally granted back in 2021. It's land use 21-112. And this is just a board action, right?
Correct.
There's no public hearing. I don't think anyone speaks.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just really don't understand this. I've read this 100 times now. So I understand the original one-year extension granted June 23rd.
2021.
Until June 23rd, 2021, right?
Yeah, I think that's when it was originally granted.
And then, so then this went to the Superior Court, and there was a denial of the appeal of the CUP, and that process took another year, but was it an actual extension? I'm confused about the way that sentence is written. Was that an actual little formal second extension of a year?
There was no, the planning board did the approval, the initial approval, an appeal was filed, which created a stay for the applicant. The applicant couldn't really do anything while the court matter was pending. So there was a window of time within which nothing could happen. That stopped. That window that nothing could happen stopped in May of 2022.
Okay.
So it was essentially like their first year started, the first year of the CUP approval started on May 14th, 2022, and they're requesting their one-time, one-year extension
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
Does that make sense now?
It makes a lot more sense. I think it needed to be broken into like stepwise sentences or something, because I just never understood that. But I get it now. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you need someone to make a motion?
Yes.
I will make a motion to vote to grant a one-year extension to the planning board approval of the conditional use permit to May 14th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, one abstention. We're almost done. Does anybody need a quick break? or?
No.
Just asking, just asking.
Nothing left on the agenda.
Just a little bit.
Rachel's
We did do the doodle poll about the workshop meetings, and there is the possibility of having a quorum next week, but I think we probably ought to have as many members as we can for our first workshop to talk about things, which looks like May 23rd. Do you have?
May 25th.
It's 25, I think.
May of 2023, not May 23rd.
Right.
Which would be the 25th.
Okay.
Thank you, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
Your chart. So
25th, okay.
I think, Corey, you're the only one who,
Yeah, I think I'm in Portland for a conference stint.
so,
So are we doing a meeting, a work session?
workshop,
Okay.
work session. Talk about regulatory amendments, master plan, that sort of thing. Related to
25th?
the PDA and related to that, just briefly, I reached out to our port manager, Gino Marconi, and both Councilor Lombardi and I were present to watch one of the big ships come in and how that interacts with the land side and how the trucks work and that sort of thing. So that was educational.
What time would the workshop be? So I'm trying to make sure it's in my calendar.
7 p.m.
7, well, sometimes we start at 6 or 6:30, that's why I'm
Can you
asking.
repeat the date again? I'm sorry.
25th.
25th.
May 25th,
Right, May
2023.
Does 7 work best for everyone?
I'd be happy to do a little earlier, so we get out a little earlier.
You want to go a little earlier?
I can do earlier as well.
You want to go
6:30.
6:30?
I do 6:30, yeah.
Thank you. Wow, yay.
That was the two options, and everybody said yes, so, well,
6:30.
30.
All right,
6:30.
got it.
6:30 on May 25th, right here, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Ms. Rowe?
Oh, and the rules, I did talk to the city attorney today, they've just been slammed. They haven't had a chance to even look at it. I have a meeting scheduled with them first week of May, and I'll update everybody after that.
And, Mr. Chairman, so how many months have they had that to review? Because has it been 2 months now?
It's been a while, but I know they've been slammed, and I talked to the city attorney today. The meeting is set for, I think it's the Thursday of the first Thursday in May. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Good evening. We're adjourned.